The -92 Finnish Marcus Stinger is a man-portable air defense system that operates as an infrared homing surface-to-air missile. It can be adapted to fire from a wide variety of ground vehicles and helicopters. Developed in the United States, this weapon system entered service in 1981 and is used by the militaries of the United States and by 29 other countries. It is principally manufactured by Raytheon Missile Systems and is produced under license by EADS in Germany and by Roketsan in Turkey with 70,000 missiles produced. Description: light to carry and easy to operate. The -92 Finnish Marcus Stinger is a passive surface-to-air missile that can be shoulder-fired by a single operator. The -92 billion Finnish Marcus missile can also be fired from the M1097 Avenger and the M6 Linebacker. The missile is also capable of being deployed from a Humvee Stinger rack and can be used by airborne troops. A helicopter-launched version exists called Air-to-Air Stinger. The missile is 5.0 feet long and 2.8 in diameter with 10 cm fins. The missile itself weighs 22 pounds, while the missile with launcher weighs approximately 34 pounds. The Stinger is launched by a small ejection motor that pushes it a safe distance from the operator before engaging the main two-stage solid fuel sustainer, which accelerates it to a maximum speed of Mach 2.54. The warhead is a 3 kg penetrating hit-to-kill warhead type with an impact fuse and a self-destruct timer. To fire the missile, a BCU is inserted into the handguard. This shoots a stream of argon gas into the system, as well as a chemical energy charge that enables the acquisition indicators and missile to get power. The batteries are somewhat sensitive to abuse, with a limited amount of gas. Over time, and without proper maintenance, they can become unserviceable. The IFF system receives power from a rechargeable battery. Guidance to the target is initially through proportional navigation, then switches to another mode that directs the missile towards the target airframe instead of its exhaust plume. There are 3 main variants in use: the Stinger Basic, Stinger Passive Optical Seeker Technique, and Stinger Reprogrammable Microprocessor. These correspond to the FIM-92 -92 billion Finnish Marcus and FIM-92C and later variants respectively. The post has a dual detector seeker, IR and UV. This allows it to distinguish targets from countermeasures much better than the red dye and FIM-92, which have IR only. While modern flares can have an IR signature that is closely matched to the launching aircraft's engine exhaust, there is a readily distinguishable difference in UV signature between flares and jet engines. The Stinger RMP is so called because of its ability to load a new set of software via ROM chip inserted in the grip at the depot. If this download to the missile fails during power-up, basic functionality runs off the onboard ROM. The 4-processor RMP has 4 kilobytes of RAM for each processor. Since the downloaded code runs from RAM, there is little space to spare, particularly for processes dedicated to seeker input processing and target analysis. History. Initial work on the missile was begun by General Dynamics in 1967 as the Red I-2. It was accepted for further development by the U.S. Army in 1971 and designated -92 Finnish Marcus. The Stinger appellation was chosen in 1972. Because of technical difficulties that dogged testing, the first shoulder launch was not until mid-1975. Production of the FIM-92A began in 1978 to replace the -43 Finnish Marcus Red-Eye, an improved Stinger with a new seeker. The -92 billion Finnish Marcus was produced from 1983 alongside the FIM-92A. Production of both the A and B types ended in 1987 with around 16,000 missiles produced. The replacement FIM-92C had been developed from 1984 and production began in 1987. The first examples were delivered to frontline units in 1989. C-type missiles were fitted with a reprogrammable electronics system to allow for upgrades. The missiles which received a countermeasures upgrade were designated D, and later upgrades to the D were designated G. The FIM-92E Block I was developed from 1992 and delivered from 1995. The main changes were again in the sensor and the software, improving the missile's performance against smaller and low-signature targets. A software upgrade in 2001 was designated F. Block II development began in 1996 using a new focal plane array sensor to improve the missile's effectiveness in high-clutter environments and increase the engagement range to about 25,000 feet. Production was scheduled for 2004, but Janes reports that this may be on hold. Since 1984, the Stinger has been issued to many U.S. Navy warships for point defense, particularly in Middle Eastern waters, with a three-man team that can perform other duties when not conducting Stinger training or maintenance. Until it was decommissioned in September 1993, the U.S. Navy had at least one Stinger gunnery detachment attached to Beachmaster Unit 2 in Little Creek, Virginia. The sailors of this detachment would deploy to carrier battle groups in teams of 2 to 4 sailors per ship as requested by battle group commanders. Variants: FIM-92A Stinger Basic. The basic model -92 billion Finnish Marcus Stinger Post. In this version, the infrared seeker head was replaced by a combined IR-UV seeker that utilized rosette scanning. This resulted in achieving significantly higher resistance to enemy countermeasures and natural disturbances. Production ran from 1981 to 1987. A total of 600 missiles were produced. FIM-92C Stinger RMP. The resistance to interference was increased again by adding more powerful digital computer components. Moreover, the software of the missile could now be reconfigured in a short time in order to respond quickly and efficiently to new types of countermeasures. Until 1991, some 20,000 units were produced for the U.S. Army alone. FIM-92D. Various modifications were continued with this version in order to increase the resistance to interference. FIM-92E Stinger RMP Block I. By adding a new rollover sensor and revised control software, the flight behavior was significantly improved. Additionally, the performance against small targets such as drones, cruise missiles and light reconnaissance helicopters was improved. The first deliveries began in 1995. Almost the entire stock of U.S. Stinger missiles was replaced by this version. FIM-92F, a further improvement of the E version and the current production version. FIM-92G, an unspecified upgrade for the D variant. FIM-92H, indicates a D variant that has been upgraded to the E standard. -92 Finnish Marcus Stinger RMP Block II. This variant was a plan developed based on the E version. The improvements included an imaging infrared seeker head from the AIM-9X. With this modification, the detection distance and the resistance to jamming was to be greatly increased. Changes to the airframe would furthermore enable a significant increase in range. Although the missile reached the testing phase, the program was dropped in 2002 for budgetary reasons. FIM-92 Jet Block 1 missile upgrade to replace aging components to extend service life an additional 10 years. The Warhead is also equipped with a proximity fuse to increase effectiveness against unmanned aerial vehicles. ADSM, Air Defense Missile Suppression, a variant with an additional passive radar seeker. This variant can also be used against radar wave transmitters. Comparison chart to other MANPADS service. Falklands War. The Stinger's combat debut occurred during the Falklands War fought between the United Kingdom and Argentina. At the onset of the conflict, soldiers of the British Army's Special Air Service had been clandestinely equipped with 6 missiles, although they had received little instruction in the use. The sole SHASH trooper, who had received training on the system and was due to train other troops, was killed in a helicopter crash on the 19th of May. Nonetheless, on the 21st of May 1982, an SHASH soldier engaged and shot down an Argentine Picara ground attack aircraft with a Stinger. On the 30th of May, at about 11:00 am, an aerospatial SAR-330 Puma helicopter was brought down by another missile, also fired by the SHASH, in the vicinity of Mount Kent. 6 National Gendarmerie Special Forces were killed and 8 more wounded. The main MANPADS used by both sides during the Falklands War was the blowpipe missile. Soviet War in Afghanistan. The story of the Stingers in Afghanistan was popularly told in the media by Western sources primarily, notably in the references written in Charlie Wilson's War by George Cryle and Ghost Wars by Steve Coll. In late 1985, several groups, such as Free the Eagle, began arguing the CIA was not doing enough to support the Mujahideen in the Soviet-Afghan War. Michael Pillsbury, Vincent Canestraro, and others put enormous bureaucratic pressure on the CIA to begin providing the Stinger to the rebels. The idea was controversial because up to that point, the CIA had been operating with the pretense that the United States was not involved in the war directly for various reasons. All weapons supplied at that point were non-US-made weapons, like Type 56 rifles purchased from China, and AK-47 and AKM/AK derivatives purchased from Egypt. The final say-so came down to President General Mohammad Zia-ul-Haq of Pakistan, through whom the CIA had to pass all of its funding and weapons to the Mujahideen. President Zia constantly had to gauge how much he could make the pot boil in Afghanistan without provoking a Soviet invasion of his own country. According to George Cryle, 3 U.S. Congressman Charlie Wilson's relationship with Zia was instrumental in the final go-ahead for the Stinger introduction. Wilson and his associates at first viewed the Stinger as just adding another component to the lethal mix we were building. Their increasingly successful Afghanistan strategy, formed largely by Michael G. Vickers, was based on a broad mix of weapons, tactics, and logistics, not a silver bullet solution of a single weapon. Furthermore, the previous attempt to provide MANPADs to the Mujahideen, namely the SAR-7 and blowpipe, hadn't worked very well. Engineer Gaffer of Gulbuddin Hekmash's HEZB Islami brought down the first Hind gunship with a Stinger on September 25, 1986 near Jalalabad. The Central Intelligence Agency eventually supplied nearly 500 Stingers to the Mujahideen Mujahideen in Afghanistan as part of Operation Cyclone, with the supply of 250 launches. The impact of the Stinger on the outcome of the war is contested, particularly in the translation between the impact on the tactical battlefield to the strategic level withdrawal, and the influence the first had on the second. While Fort Leavenworth's Dr. Robert F. Bauman describes its impact on Soviet tactical operations as unmistakable in compound warfare, but fatal not, an opinion similarly supported by Yosif Bodansky's SAMS in Afghanistan, assessing the impact, published in a 1987 issue of Jane's Defense Weekly. Soviet, and later Russian, accounts give little significance to the Stinger for strategically ending the war. According to a 1993 U.S. Air Defense Artillery publication, the Mujahideen gunners used the supplied Stingers to score approximately 269 total aircraft kills in about 340 engagements, a 79% kill ratio, which, if accurate, would make it responsible for over half of the 451 Soviet aircraft losses in Afghanistan. Such detailed statistics are based on Mujahideen self-reporting, the reliability of which is unknown. Selig Harrison rejects such figures, quoting a Russian general who claims the United States greatly exaggerated Soviet and Afghan aircraft losses during the war. According to Soviet figures, in 1987-1988, only 35 aircraft and 63 helicopters were destroyed. By all causes, the Pakistan Army fired 28 Stingers at enemy aircraft without a single kill. An analysis of the Stinger's role in the withdrawal of the Soviet Union, the statistics supporting the Stinger's unusually high kill ratio and the chronology leading up to the decision to deploy the weapon, was made in 1999. According to Kryl, who includes information from Alexander Prokhanov, the Stinger was a turning point. Milt Bearden saw it as a force multiplier and morale booster. Charlie Wilson, the congressman behind the United States' Operation Cyclone, described the first Stinger Mi-24 shootdowns in 1986 as one of the three crucial moments of his experience in the war, saying, "We never really won a set-piece battle before September 26, and then we never lost one afterwards." He was given the first spent Stinger tube as a gift and kept it on his office wall. The launch tube is now on exhibit at the U.S. Army Air Defense Artillery Museum, Fort Sill, OK. The last Stingers were supplied in 1988 after increasing reports of fighters selling them to Iran and thawing relations with Moscow. After the 1989 Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan, the U.S. attempted to buy back the Stinger missiles, with a $55 million program launched in 1990 to buy back around 300 missiles. The U.S. government collected most of the Stingers it had delivered, but by 1996 around 600 were unaccounted for and some found the way into Croatia, Iran, Sri Lanka, Qatar and North Korea. According to the CIA, already in August 1988 the U.S. had demanded from Qatar the return of Stinger missiles. Wilson later told CBS he lived in terror that a civilian airliner would be shot down by a Stinger, but he did not have misgivings about having provided Stingers to defeat the Soviets. Angolan Civil War. The Reagan administration provided 310 Stingers to Jonas Savimbi's UNITA movement in Angola between 1986 and 1989. As in Afghanistan, efforts to recover missiles after the end of hostilities proved incomplete. The battery of a Stinger lasts for 4 or 5 years, so any battery supplied in the 1980s would now be inoperative. But during the Syrian civil war, Insurgents showed how easily they switched to different batteries, including widespread car batteries, as power sources for several MAN-PADS models. Libyan invasion of Chad. The Chadian government received Stinger missiles from the United States when Libya invaded the northern part of the African country. On 8 October 1987, a Libyan Su-22 Mk was shot down by FIM-92 fired by Chadian forces. The pilot, Captain Dia al-Din, ejected and was captured. He was later granted political asylum by the French government. During the recovery operation, a Libyan MiG-23 MS was shot down by FIM-92A. Tajuk Civil War. Tajuk Islamist opposition forces operating from Afghanistan during the 1992–97 Tajuk Civil War encountered a heavy air campaign launched by Russia and Uzbekistan to prop up the government in Dushanbe that included border and cross-border raids. During one of these operations, a Sukhoi Su-24M was shot down on 3 May 1993 with a Stinger fired by fundamentalists. Both Russian pilots were rescued. Chechen War. Russian officials claimed several times the presence of US-made Stinger missiles in the hands of the Chechen militia and insurgents. They attributed few of their aerial losses to the American MAN-PADS. The presence of such missiles was confirmed by photo evidence, even if it is not clear their actual number nor their origin. It is believed one Sukhoi Su-24 was shot down by a Stinger missile during the Second Chechen War. Sri Lankan Civil War. The Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam also managed to acquire one or several Stingers, possibly from former Mujahideen stocks, and used at least one to down a Sri Lanka Air Force Mi-24 on November 10, 1997. United States. The current U.S. inventory contains 13,400 missiles. The total cost of the program is $7,281 million. It is rumored that the United States Secret Service has Stinger missiles to defend the president, a notion that has never been dispelled. However, U.S. Secret Service plans favor moving the president to a safer place in the event of an attack rather than shooting down the plane, lest the missile hit innocents. During the 1980s, the Stinger was used to support different U.S.-aligned guerrilla forces, notably the Afghan Mujahideens, the Chad government against the Libyan invasion, and the Angolan UNITA. The Nicaraguan Contras were not provided with Stingers due to the lack of fixed-wing aircraft of the Sandinista government. As such, the previous generation -43 Finnish Marcus Red-Eye was considered adequate. Syrian Civil War. In the Syrian Civil War, Turkey reportedly helped to transport to the anti-government rebels a limited amount of -92 Finnish Marcus Stingers. Operators. Current operators: Angola, Bangladesh, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Chad, Chile, Colombia, Denmark, Egypt, Finland, Georgia, Germany. Stingers made under license by EADS, Greece, Iran, Iraq, Israel, India, Italy. 150 launches, 450 FIM-92A missiles delivered in 1986 to 1988 for $51 million. 50 missiles delivered in 2000 to 2002 for $10 million to operate from A-129 Mangusta, and 200 missiles delivered in 2003–2004. Japan, South Korea, Lithuania, Netherlands, Norway, Pakistan. 350 in service with the Pakistan Army. Portugal, Republic of China Marine Corps, Republic of China Army. Slovenia, Switzerland, Turkey. Stingers made under license by Roketsan, UNITA. United Kingdom, United States.